go. Strengthen us, the weak to church. Give us vision, lest we perish. Knowledge send us, Heavenly Father. Grant true wisdom from above. Justice, truth be ours forever. Jamaica, land we love. Jamaica, 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 land we love. Thank you. You sound beautiful. Please be seated, ladies and gentlemen. So it is our pleasure to welcome you to the ceremonial signing and the official launch of the Spotlight Initiative in Jamaica. It is happening here at the Office of the Prime Minister as a signal of the importance that's attached to this program. And it's also a signal of the high commitment of the government of Jamaica towards eliminating gender-based violence. My name is Oliver Watt. I shall be your Master of Ceremonies this morning. Let me introduce the people at the head table. Farthest from me is Miss Michelle Gyles-McDonnough. We have to make that correction to the program. So sorry, Ms. McDonagh. Director for Sustainable Development Unit, Executive Office of the Secretary-General of the United Nations. Beside her is Senator, the Honorable Kamina Johnson-Smith, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. Then the Most Honorable Prime Minister, Andrew Holness, and the Honorable Olivia Grange, Minister of Culture, Gender, Entertainment, and Sport, and Ms. Jolita Butkeviciene, Director for Latin America and the Caribbean, European Commission, Directorate-General for International Cooperation and Development. So I've been practicing. I hope I got it quite right. Okay. It's going to be a very short and quick program. There is cabinet immediately preceding this morning's program. So to get us started, please help me welcome the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, Senator, the Honorable Kamina Johnson-Smith.
Most Honorable Andrew Holness, Prime Minister, Cabinet colleagues, and of course, special acknowledgement to the Honorable Babsy Grange, Minister responsible for gender, Ms. Jolita Butkeviciene, Director for Latin America and the Caribbean in the European External Action Service, Ambassador Malgorzata Vasilevska, Head of the EU Delegation in Jamaica, known to us all, Ms. Michelle Gyles-McDonnough, Director of Sustainable Development in the Office of the Secretary-General of the United Nations, Ms. Mariko Kagoshima, UN Resident Coordinator ad interim, heads of international organizations, excellencies, heads of civil society organizations represented here today. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is a pleasure, an absolute pleasure, for me to welcome you here to the Office of the Prime Minister for today's ceremonial launch of the Spotlight Initiative to eliminate violence against women and children in Jamaica. We're doing so today with the joint support of our traditional partners, the European Union and the United Nations. Having advocated for Jamaica's inclusion in the program, even while it was still being developed, and after its commencement in other countries, the pleasure for me is even greater and a little bit personal. For anyone familiar with the chronic and cyclic issue of violence against women and children, anyone aware of the need to put more resources behind the National Strategic Action Plan to end violence against women and girls, you would readily understand why Minister Grange would have asked me to explore any significant opportunity to identify resources during my international engagements. Even in its preliminary stages, it was clear and easy to recognize the significant benefits to be gained from Jamaica's partnership, or rather Jamaica's participation in this partnership. I'm indeed heartened that we are now in a position to formally launch the important work to be undertaken, and that it is being launched in the presence of our Honorable Prime Minister, who has remained fully supportive of this process and indeed all related initiatives to empower women and girls and to tackle gender-based violence. It is perhaps fortuitous, but certainly most fitting, that we have gathered for this launch just one day after celebrating International Women's Day 2020 under the theme, I Am Generation Equality, Realizing Women's Rights. And as we begin to consider the progress made, marking the 25th anniversary of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, the most progressive blueprint ever for advancing women's rights, including, of course, the global commitment to end gender-based violence. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the statistics which we will undoubtedly hear today paint a stark picture of how much more work still needs to be done to keep our women and children safe. Jamaica is therefore pleased to be among the countries of the region that have been included in this global partnership of the Spotlight Initiative, which in the Caribbean focuses on addressing all forms of family violence. We welcome in particular the key strategies of the initiative: to build on existing national programs, such as the National Plan of Action for an Integrated Response to Children and Violence, to treat family violence as a public emergency, to empower youth and adolescent girls in particular, to engage men and boys, and of course, to improve data integration, accessibility, and quality, all of which are grounded in Agenda 2030 principle of leaving no one behind. Jamaica, for its part, remains fully committed to gender empowerment and the elimination of violence against women and children. The science is clear. Child victims of and witness to violence are exponentially more likely to become victims or perpetrators of violence. The medium to long-term social, cultural, and economic impact to be had, therefore, from successfully addressing family violence will be significant for Jamaica. I want, therefore, to thank Minister Grange and her team, the representatives of the EU and the UN, both here and at headquarters, members of my ministry and other MDAs, including the PIOJ, who have brought us to this point, and in advance, of course, for all that is to be done going forward. Jamaica is confident that through the Spotlight Initiative, which will support work in progress and add new elements, we can successfully tackle many challenges faced by our country as we endeavor to end family violence and build safe, equitable, and empowered societies in which we are all treated with respect and dignity and can all fulfill our greatest potential. I thank you and welcome you once more.
Thank you, Minister. And now we will hear from Ms. Jolita Butkeviciene, the Director for Latin America and the Caribbean, European Commission, Directorate-General for International Cooperation and Development. Please welcome her.
Mr. Prime Minister, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'm truly proud and very humbled to be here. The fact that Jamaica is at the heart of this program does not mean that Jamaica is the worst in the region. It does mean that Jamaica has a problem. But when we were discussing with Michelle which are the countries where we as international partners should align with, our first question is, where can we make a difference? No amount of money in the world will solve the problem. The problem has to be appropriated and solved by Jamaica. And if the government is not committed, we will not advance much. And certainly Jamaica, as we see today, with its leadership, is the country that we believe, and I think the program as such is placing the trust in the government that we can make a difference. And hence, we are very proud to announce that we have put in the decided, and we are putting 1.3 billion Jamaican dollars, more than that, for this program together with government of Jamaica to fight against sexual and gender-based violence and domestic violence in Jamaica. We, as the EU, we stand by principles and values that we apply to ourselves. And we believe in gender equality and in women's empowerment. For the first time, EU political leadership, which faces occasionally bigger problems than here in Jamaica, for the first time we have a president who is a woman with a complicated name as well, Ursula von der Leyen. It's called cultural diversity in Europe. She insisted in a gender-biased way of encouraging to have at least half of our political leaders being women. It has never happened before. And not for the press, but to say that we haven't done our homework in all countries either. You know, I come from a country which is small, is as small as Jamaica, which Jamaica is big because it's in the Caribbean. But my country is small in Europe, and it had a government that had no women ministers last year. So it was not 50 years ago. And in this sense, Jamaica is very much ahead. Not only that we had a Minister of Foreign Affairs who is a clear leader, we have amazing Jamaicans like Michelle, who has a very complicated title, but I can say that this is one of the Jamaican daughters who makes the country very proud. And no one argues with Michelle in the European Union, except me, of course. So whatever the title, she's very important. The EU commitment to gender equality is also one of the reasons why EU teamed up, and we hope that we can make a difference. I was talking with the minister just before we sat down at this table, and my question is, we are making the difference on how we see climate change. I still remember my daughter saw me going out to the office, and I had these plastic cups with me because I had no time to wash glasses, and she said, "What is this?" And I didn't understand what is wrong with me. I'm just having these plastic cups. And she said, "You in the European Commission, you're not drinking from these single plastic use?" And it was a shock, so now I moved to paper still. But it shows that it can happen. This cultural shift can happen, and we can think, I believe we can do this in Jamaica. And this belief in the government of Jamaica shows that we are committed to implementation of this gender goal that United Nations had agreed under number 5. I'm not sure if the 5 means the priority. Michelle, you have to explain this. Okay. Well, we as EU thought we would also give a good signal to the United Nations when we launched the Spotlight Initiative worldwide, when we signed with the Secretary-General of the United Nations pledging 75 billion for this program in the world. And for the Caribbean, we found only five countries where we thought we can have trust. It's not that others don't have problem. We just don't believe that we can make a difference. We believe that in Jamaica we can make a difference. So we have allocated 7.5 billion also. Mr. Prime Minister, as rightly noted, your presence and the cabinet members' presence are sending very strong signal. It is a bold political commitment. It's a risky political commitment because you are walking in the streets, and if people don't see the difference, you will be held accountable to, you and your cabinet. But there is a very bold political commitment to ensuring a life free from all forms of domestic or family violence to every woman and girl in Jamaica. It is also, in our view, an example and a standard for other countries in the region. Your leadership on fighting violence against the women resounds in the Caribbean and will be inspiration to others. Why do I know it? Because I know we've been working for many years, and things do work in Jamaica. we're not starting from scratch. Of course, as Minister has recognized, there is a huge already work accomplished by the government, by the people of Jamaica. We are not working alone. We're working with other international partners. And you will not be surprised that I will again refer to Canada, who is already on the ground working on women's voice and leadership and supporting women's organization. And we need the best in the international community to succeed. We also need the best in the United Nations family. And I cannot thank enough the commitment of Mariko Kagoshima in leading the home team. Collectively, all of us here today, we are fighting to end this violence against women and girls, because this is not to be solved by one. You need to have the whole vertical and the whole horizontal alliance. And we need to have inspiration. We need the voices like the Minister of Foreign Affairs. And for her to succeed, we need to be a good team in delivering on our objectives. Spotlight builds on a number of engagements. The first one is legislative and policy gaps. We know Jamaica has seen significant improvements, but we are ambitious. And we also know that leaders of this country will ensure that necessary political will, policies, laws, and services are in place, and they are not below any international standard. We also believe that adequate services for survivors and families need to be ensured 100%. And interventions will aim at creating conditions to prevent gender-based violence and in parallel strengthened services with an approach which is centered on a person. We believe that improving referral and reporting systems would be crucial in advancing along these lines. The program will seek to change these deep-rooted stigmas and attitudes by promoting positive gender norms, respect for women and girls, and conflict resolution skills within families and communities. Yes, we do believe that national data should be strengthened, and if this system is taking into account and is a good mirror, it will help both in changing attitudes and in also management of the processes. What has also been said already, but I'd like to completely stress this, that program is not only about women and girls, but it's also about boys and men. We need to have them on board. We need the whole society working with religious leaders, traditional leaders, teachers, and others is crucial if we want to obtain a real and lasting change. And finally, we need engagement of civil society. Here we need to work as a team. There is no one who is working for own purposes. Has to be all united to make a difference. And we believe that civil society organizations, particularly youth associations and women's rights organizations, are vital and could complement and backstop any gaps in institutional services and further strengthen systems and linkages. And finally, we need to continue our sustained efforts because we know that violence is not irreversible. It has a solution. It lies with the national leaders we have here today. It lies with brave advocates who will not be silenced. And it lies with each and every one of us, every day, in every way, to challenge the discourse and to change the women's and girls' lives. This is why I'm delighted to be here with the highest leaders of the government, committed to bring about the change in attitudes, norms, and services that we all need. Our global partnership has been built over the years. It hasn't started today. Today is a very important landmark in addressing challenges which are difficult for anyone to recognize, but it also shows the trust that our relationship has. And I believe that in commencing this journey today in Jamaica, with all the actors of the society, we will be successful again as we have been in the past. I feel very honored to be part of this endeavor, especially here and in the presence of all these people who are inspiring all the women and men of Jamaica. And I always say, since I cannot be Jamaican, at least I can have friends who are Jamaicans.
Thank you very much, Ms. Butkeviciene. Ladies and gentlemen, please now welcome Ms. Michelle Gyles-McDonnough, Director for Sustainable Development Unit, Executive Office of the Secretary-General, United Nations.
Thank you very much. 3 times is a charm. Good morning. Most Honorable Prime Minister of Jamaica, Honorable Olivia Grange, Minister of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport, Senator the Honorable Kamina Johnson-Smith, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, Honorable members of Cabinet and members of Parliament who are here, Ms. Jolita Butkeviciene, Director of Latin America and the Caribbean at the European Commission's Directorate-General for International Cooperation and Development, Ambassador Malgorzata Wasilewska, Head of the European Union, Delegation to Jamaica, members of the Diplomatic Corps who are here, members of civil society, our resident coordinator, Mariko Kagoshima, and my UN colleagues and friends. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It's always a joy to be home. On behalf of the United Nations, it is my pleasure to join the Most Honorable Prime Minister Andrew Holness, Minister Olivia Grange, and Minister Kamina Johnson, and other ministers of government and civil society, and our European Union partners, represented by Director Butkeviciene and Ambassador Wasilewska, to affirm our joint commitment to end violence against women and girls by 2030. While efforts Today's launch event, let me step back, comes just after yesterday's celebration of International Women's Day, as Minister Johnson-Smith mentioned, where many stood up here in Jamaica and around the world to proclaim, "I am Generation Equality," as they joined a multi-generational campaign to realize women's rights, which still eludes us 25 years after the Beijing Declaration and Platform of Action. It is a fitting starting point for a major investment that builds on existing initiatives to end violence against women and girls in Jamaica. Around the world, there is an epidemic of violence against women and girls. It is one of the most widespread, persistent, and devastating human rights violations, with 1 in 3 women worldwide having experienced physical or sexual violence at some point in their lives. And it is likely higher, as in many countries, as here, there is underreporting. This violence across regions of the world is a reflection of social norms and attitudes rooted in unequal power dynamics, perpetuated within families, communities, and nations. Centuries of patriarchy and male domination have left a legacy of inequality that affects private and public life, businesses and institutions of all kinds. In Jamaica, 1/5 of women report that they were sexually abused as children. 2 out of 10 of our girls aged 15 to 19 think it is okay for a husband or partner to hit his wife or partner. In 2018, 71% of girls under 18 who were victims of crime were raped. Much of this violence is perpetuated in the home, and evidence shows family violence disproportionately impacts women and girls. While efforts have been mobilized to address this violence and these harmful social norms, we recognize that women and girls still suffer extreme manifestations of violence in Jamaica. Toxic and harmful masculinity is deeply embedded in society, reinforcing structures that normalize and accept violence. But it is clear that we cannot achieve peaceful societies if half the community is living in fear and insecurity. If violence is accepted as a solution in our homes, it becomes acceptable everywhere. We cannot achieve sustainable development without peaceful societies. This is why the European Union and the United Nations decided to launch the Spotlight Initiative, a partnership to support governments, communities, and civil society organizations in over 25 countries and in 5 regions across the world to eliminate all forms of violence against women and girls by 2030. Spotlight is an unprecedented global effort, started with the generous funding of 500 million euros by the European Union to invest in gender equality and women's empowerment as a precondition and a driver for the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. Jamaica's inclusion in this international effort is evidence not only of a need for more comprehensive programming in this area, but also has been said repeatedly here this morning, because of the strong commitment and readiness of the government to eliminate violence in Jamaica in all its forms. The government of Jamaica has adopted key international human rights instruments. Parliament has passed national legislation, such as the Domestic Violence Act, the Child Care and Protection Act, and the Sexual Offences Against the Persons Act. Jamaica's national policy for gender equality and the government's recent tabling of a sexual harassment bill are additional and necessary steps to reduce all forms of discrimination against women and girls and to promote gender equality. The Spotlight Initiative in Jamaica will contribute to reinforcing successful initiatives that are already underway and take a comprehensive, whole-of-society approach by supporting civil society organizations, women's movements, and vulnerable social groups and the media to become more effective partners to transform society into a space where all women and girls can live free from family violence. This initial US $10.6 million investment will allow for concentrated investments that can move the needle on ending family violence in Jamaica and focus on 6 key outcomes in a comprehensive whole-of-society approach. As the director of the European Union Latin American Caribbean division said, we need men and women, boys and girls, everybody in this fight. This program will focus on supporting policies and legislation to end violence against women and girls. There is much that is there, but there are also gaps, and we intend to fill them. It will strengthen institutions, working with national partners to integrate prevention of and response to violence against women and girls. We will strengthen our support to the Ministry of Gender Affairs and to the Bureau. And we will ensure through this program that we insist that not just the Ministry of Gender Affairs, but all ministries, that you take women and girls into account as you design your policies, as you implement your programs. Gender, women are a part of every aspect of our lives. We will target community actions aimed at promoting positive gender norms, as was said. Respect. We need to redefine what we consider respect. Respect for women and girls and conflict resolution skills within families and within our communities. It will bring effective and coordinated services to assist those who have suffered from violence. It will strengthen our data sets to guide policy, guide investments, and guide the response. And finally, the Spotlight Initiative will empower women's movements and civil society in the country to address accountability and the underlying inequality that drives family violence. Mr. Prime Minister, at the Spotlight Initiative high-level event at the 74th session of the UN General Assembly last September, you shared that tackling this issue is of the highest priority for your government. You added that you look forward to the finalization and implementation of Jamaica's national program. Mr. Prime Minister, I'm happy to report today that Jamaica's Spotlight Initiative program is ready for implementation. We, the European Union and the United Nations, are proud to be partners to buttress Jamaica's commitment and to help scale up and amplify national efforts to address family violence and violence against women and girls with urgency. Today, we're here to show that with the highest level of political commitment, strong multilateral partnerships, we can directly confront and collectively work to end violence against women and girls. It is possible. It will improve not only women's lives, but that of families and the broader society, and empower women to contribute to their fullest potential to Jamaica's sustainable development. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gyles-McDonnough. And now, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Honorable Olivia Grange, Minister of Culture, Gender, Entertainment, and Sport.
Wow, I feel so much empowered today. Thank you, Oliver. Senator, Honorable Prime Minister, Senator Kamina Johnson Smith, Her Excellency Gosha, Marika, if you don't mind, ladies and gentlemen, I like to go with the easy names, right? Miss Jolita, Michelle, Allison. I want to especially acknowledge Mrs. Allison Anderson McLean, my former permanent secretary, and the UN sub-regional, the head of the UN sub-regional office. I want you to give her another big round of applause. Of course, I must acknowledge my colleague ministers and senator. I see just one senator who is not a minister here this morning, Senator Longmore, and I want you to give her a special round of applause as well. She knows why. Stakeholders of the gender community. I have the Gender Advisory Council here, the Bureau of Gender Affairs, and Board of Directors for the Women's Center of Jamaica Foundation. Members of the Diplomatic Corps, representatives of the media, and all those persons who are watching and listening through social media, because we're streaming live, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. Yesterday, we marked International Women's Day by celebrating the outstanding achievements and contributions of the women of Jamaica to our country. And there is so much to celebrate, ladies and gentlemen, that one day isn't enough to highlight all the achievements and contributions. But even as we acknowledge and applaud women for significant contributions to national development and the pivotal roles that women have played and continue to play in this country, we know that it wasn't a happy day for some of our women in Jamaica. While we were celebrating, and even in this moment, a woman and a girl and a family and a community in our country continue to experience the horrific effects and consequences of gender-based violence. The statistics paints an ugly picture of life for too many women in our beautiful country. 1 in every 4 women in Jamaica has experienced physical violence by a male partner. 1 in every 5 women reported being sexually abused before reaching 18 years old. And half of abused women say they have never left the abusive environment. I keep saying that the violence is not inevitable. It is not a normal part of life. And we can stop the violence, but it requires all of us to stop the violence. It requires women, it requires men, boys and girls, as together we have to fight this scourge. And this is why today's activity, ladies and gentlemen, is so important. It is a reflection of this government's determination to build partnerships as we confront the major issues that affect us all. It represents an important partnership for change, and I want to use this opportunity to ask you all to applaud the Honorable Prime Minister, who has given his full backing to our efforts in treating with the gender issues and gender-based violence. And I must also recognize, while we speak, the permanent secretaries who are here this morning with us, because together we work as a team in our ministry to ensure our programs are carried through. I thank the European Union and the United Nations for partnering with us on this Spotlight initiative, which will strengthen our efforts to end the violence. The Spotlight initiative is not a quick fix or a magic wand, but it is a major, major part of our response to this crisis that we face in our homes and communities. It will address the violence as a major public health and development issue under the banner of family violence, and with a focus on 3 priority areas: child sexual abuse, intimate partner violence, and discrimination against vulnerable groups, including the elderly and members of society with disabilities and special needs. While the Spotlight initiative will focus largely on women and girls, important efforts will be made to engage men and boys to address the toxic masculinity that is deeply embedded in the society. Toxic masculinity. There is a certain pervasive idea of masculine identity that is at the root of the high levels of violence, including gender-based violence in our country. This idea of masculinity that we teach and enforce causes men to see themselves as strong and women as weak. It makes them feel that they are superior to women and that they can own, control, and abuse women. It is what we call, yes, toxic masculinity. It is the idea that boy must grow rough. But what we end up with is the hardening of society, the coarsening of exchanges, not only of men, but of women who must assert themselves in the face of male aggression. It is not a good thing, and we must eliminate it by changing the ways we choose. It is a choice to raise our boys and to raise our girls. Our problem is deep-rooted, and we continue to take strategic action to deal effectively with it, including the establishment of the Gender Advisory Council, which guides the implementation, monitoring, and evaluation of the National Policy for Gender Equality and the National Strategic Plan to Eliminate Gender-Based Violence. And I'll ask the GAC members to just put your hands up. The implementation of the National Shelter Strategy for Victims of Intimate Partner Violence. The establishment of national 24-hour hotlines for victims, including a text line for the deaf. Legislation to increase protection of vulnerable people, such as children and the elderly. And ongoing sensitization and awareness raising among the public. The Spotlight initiative will enhance and support these actions. And I look forward to a meaningful working relationship over the next 3 years. Eliminating family violence is of vital importance, and we must succeed at doing so. So, As I close, I just want to thank you all for coming. I want to thank the EU and the UN for giving us this real push by providing us with the funding that will help our program. I want to thank Kamina Johnson-Smith for being a great negotiator and for ensuring that we get, in Jamaica we say that we need cash to care. And I want to thank Prime Minister Andrew Holness for always backing me when I get on about gender issues. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Minister. And now, ladies and gentlemen, with the keynote, the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, Prime Minister.
Thank you, Oliver. The Honorable Olivia Grange, Minister of Culture, Gender, Entertainment, and Sports. Senator the Honorable Kamina Johnson-Smith, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. Other members of the Cabinet in attendance. Her Excellency Margazata Vasiliska, Head of Delegation of the European Union, and other members of the Diplomatic Corps present. Jolita Butkeviciene, Director for Latin America and the Caribbean at the European Union's Directorate-General for International Cooperation and Development. Michelle Gyles-McDonnough, Director, Sustainable Development Unit, Executive Office of the Secretary-General of the United Nations, and other heads of international organizations. I see Mariko Kagoshima, UN Resident Coordinator. Our permanent secretaries, heads of public bodies and private entities, stakeholders of the gender community, representatives of the media. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Good morning. It is my great pleasure to be here this morning for this most important occasion, the national launch of the Spotlight Initiative in collaboration with the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sports, and the European Union in Jamaica and the United Nations. At the Spotlight Initiative high-level event at the 74th UN General Assembly in September 2019, I committed to making the elimination of gender-based violence, especially violence against women and girls, a high priority objective for the government of Jamaica. I advised that Jamaica is pursuing several policy and legislative measures designed to create a more cohesive and a more resilient society. Our major goals are to promote in an inclusive and sustainable way economic growth, opportunities, peace, social harmony, and citizen safety and security. As a government, we are committed to the national vision of making Jamaica the place of choice for people to live, work, raise families, do business, and I have added retire in paradise. For this vision to be achieved, Jamaica must remain steadfast in our efforts to eliminate violence against women and girls. Violence against women and girls continues to be one of the most widespread, persistent, and devastating human rights violations in our world today. In Jamaica, as was said before, 1 in 4 women have reported experiencing physical or sexual violence in their lifetime. And this was based on the Women's Survey 2016. This is an issue on which we have been acting. We have been working to bring an end to gender-based violence through legislative, policy, and programmatic actions that protect victims of violence and bring perpetrators to justice. We are working towards building a culture free of violence, a culture where women and our girls are respected, protected, and celebrated. In December 2017, we launched a 10-year national strategic action plan to eliminate gender-based violence. And in 2018, we launched the first public education campaign titled No Excuse for Abuse. You remember that, Minister Grange? Along with UN Women, we have been building out an island-wide social media campaign to increase awareness for the protection of women and girls. At the same time, we are engaging men and boys as key partners in the ongoing program to provide empowerment. We have also made significant national budgetary allocations for the construction of 3 nationally owned and operated shelters for abused women and their children. I'm told by Minister Grange that this fiscal year, we should be able to have all 3 open and operational. The Spotlight Initiative is a joint European Union and United Nations multi-year global initiative focused on eliminating all forms of violence against women and girls. As its name suggests, it is meant to focus attention on the issue, moving it into the spotlight and placing it at the center of efforts to achieve gender equality and women's empowerment. I'm therefore pleased today to launch the Spotlight Initiative Country Program for Jamaica. The Spotlight Initiative in Jamaica will be a 3-year program costing approximately US $10.6 million. It will contribute to transforming our society into one where women and girls can thrive, free of any kind of violence towards them. It will focus on addressing the issue of normalization of violence in Jamaica and encourage society to see family violence as a public issue requiring consistent and concerted effort to address. The initiative will focus its intervention within 4 parishes, which have been determined to have high levels of violence towards women and girls, while work will continue on the legislation and policy aspects to impact the entire population. Although the initiative takes a women and girls-centered approach, men and boys will also be engaged in order to address the issue of toxic masculinity. That was explained by Minister Grange and further explored in our parliament by Minister Terrelong, the Minister of State in the Ministry of Education. And Minister Grange said it seems to be embedded in the society, and I would want to agree with you that the historical nature and development of our society would certainly embed these kinds of gender power relationships, which have now reached the point where they are toxic. This morning I was reading the paper and you referred to the incident. A very unfortunate incident, but it reflects so poorly on our society. It occurred in Westmoreland. And what struck me was that the sister of the abuser who perished as a result of what is reported of the abused victim's response, made a critical point. She said she warned him. She told him not to do this. And the family, it appears, recognized that abuse was taking place, abuse which has resulted in the loss of life. But it speaks to a gap, because this kind of situation is prevalent across the society, indeed rooted in the society. And what we're doing here today is a policy response supported by our international partners, the EU and the UN, to respond to what is essentially in Jamaica a public crisis of epidemic proportions. And I don't want to use the term epidemic in the current context, but the epidemiology of the situation suggests that it is not a private social transaction. It is costing and having an impact on the public good. And therefore, the government has to intervene. So this argument about it is man and woman business, meaning it is a private business in which the state has no locus, that is utter nonsense. If you beat up your woman, it has an impact on the state. It has an impact on the children who will grow up to probably becoming abusers or acceptors of abuse. It has an impact on our murder rate. It has an impact on the well-being generally of the community. It creates an acceptance of violence as the means of resolving conflict. And it has an impact on our economy. When an abused woman can't go to work, or when someone dies as the breadwinner, it has an impact. So this is not man and woman business. This is now the business of the people of Jamaica, and thereby the government of Jamaica will intervene. Minister Grange has just pointed out to me that the parish in which this very tragic incident has occurred, Westmoreland, is one of the 4 parishes that will benefit from the intervention. The initiative will improve women's access to services by 1, strengthening existing reporting, referral, and case management mechanisms and tools that link survivors to service providers along the continuum of care, ensuring that rural communities and non-traditional groups are not excluded. It sounds very complex, but it means that we will support the systems that can bring the services and conduct the intervention. 2, creating models of integration, coordination, and communication among national and subnational institutions to enhance capacity, prevention, and delivery of services. What this means is that at the governmental level, all the agencies will coordinate their effort. I hope my speechwriters are listening. And 3, assessing and using alternative forms of justice other than the criminal justice system to provide easier access to justice, especially in cases of family violence. And I think that's self-explanatory. A particularly innovative feature of the program is that it will utilize visual arts, Jamaican popular music, storytelling, theater, and photography to convey messages which aim to promote positive parenting, gender equality, and respect among girls, boys, men, and women. The content of this messaging will be geared primarily towards addressing the root causes of family violence and the promotion of positive gender norms and gender equality. Ladies and gentlemen, this year, the global community will mark the 25th anniversary of the 4th World Conference on Women and the adoption of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action 1995. A 5-year milestone will also be reached towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goals of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. 2020 is therefore a pivotal year for the accelerated realization of gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls everywhere. This is a vision of a more prosperous, peaceful, and fair world that is ultimately better for both men and women alike. Collaboration and partnership are essential to realizing the goal of engendering a safe society where no one is abused, oppressed, or disenfranchised. A whole of society, whole of government, and institutional approach is critical to achieving this goal. The government of Jamaica is deeply appreciative of the support of our partners, the European Union and the United Nations. They have made significant investments through the Spotlight Initiative Country Program to the cause of ending violence against women and girls. Jamaica is committed to this program as it supports our vision of a disciplined and harmonious society where everyone's sacred rights and freedoms are protected and respected, and where all Jamaicans can self-actualize. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. Just like to tell you that the 4 parishes are Westmoreland, Clarendon, St. Thomas, and Kingston and St. Andrew as a group. Okay? Hey? We're covered. All right, so we have the floor open for questions. GIS? Let's start with GIS. We have microphones so we can get your questions.
Hi, everyone. Oh, here we go. So my first question, well, you kind of answered. I was asking about the other parishes. My second is what kind of tangible support will be provided to male groups to help them end the stigma and the occurrences of gender-based violence?
Okay, so we have some help to answer the questions. We have the Ambassador Vashiletska, we have Mariko Kashima, we have Sharon Robinson. Please forgive my Japanese. So who will take that one? Mrs. Robinson or Mariko? Mariko? Huh? Okay, so we want to take all the questions and then we have all the responses, okay? So we remember that one is about...
the tangible support being offered to male groups to help out.
Right. Who's next? Don't be shy. Okay, that seems like the only question. Mariko?
Thank you very much for the question. In order to address boys and men, we are going to intervene civil society organizations that are working with men and boys. That's number one. But at the same time, at community level interventions, we are going to closely work with parents for the better parenting so that boys will have intervention that strengthens their understanding within their role within the society. It's not just dominant role or that you have to be strong and dominant. Those kind of notions we would like to eliminate from early on by working closely with parents as well. So there are two tiers of interventions: strengthening civil society organizations working with men and boys, but at the same time, from early childhood, intervening with boys and girls equally. Thank you.
Thank you. To complement what Marika said, we already have a set of men's groups that we're working with, and Mogava is one of them, that has been doing fantastic work with men and boys and fathers, and just highlighting the role of fathers and the challenges that they have. So this spotlight will look forward to working closely with those groups that are already doing significant work around men's issues and boys' issues. Parenting, making sure that there's mentorship and coaching for boys. So where there's already work being done, the spotlight will support and augment. And where the work has not been started, then it will be initiated so that the parenting issues, the mentorship issues, the coaching issues for boys and men will be enhanced. So it's a holistic approach to make sure that where the issues are, that they're addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Robinson. Now we move into the signing. We invite Ambassador Malgorzata Wasilewska, head of the European Union delegation in Jamaica. Mariko Kagashima, the acting head of the UN in Jamaica, will also be signing, along with the Minister of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport, the Honorable Olivia Green. So, gentlemen and ladies of the press, please get your pictures. It's hot, it's going. Okay, so a round of applause, please. We're on to something good. Handing over. Okay. One more applause, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. All right. We're just coming up to time for cabinet, but Prime Minister has one last statement to make. Minister Grange. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen of the press, I advise that you plug in. The Prime Minister has one last statement to make. So please.
It's Minister Green, do you want to just? Thank you, everyone. It was obviously a very good session today in the launch of the Spotlight Initiative. But having the spotlight now cast on gender-based violence, violence against women and girls, family violence, I thought I would use this platform to make a public appeal. Those of you who have been following the media would have seen the case of a young woman. Her name is Jasmine Dean, 22-year-old university student. She's a student at the University of the West Indies, but she is also visually impaired. And she has been missing for almost a week now. 2 weeks now. From the 27th of February, she has been missing. It's a very sad situation. I am personally hurt by this. To think that something terrible could have befallen her, and we pray to God that that is not the case. We hope that some mercy could reach the hearts of those who have her in their captive, if that is the case, to release her. The entire Jamaica is praying for her safe return.
Very much. Thank you very much, Prime Minister. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for attending. May I invite you to have some coffee with us? Have a great day.